I learned how I figured out that this particular lesson is incredibly important. And a lot of people don't really think it's that big of a deal, but it is. And I'll tell you where this all started from with me. I was originally in Sri Lanka in 2012 and 11 and 12 for about a year total, working at a college in Pallekele in Sri Lanka. And I was teaching dependent origination at the college level for monks and lay people. And I was asked near the end of my time there to go to the first world conference that was held at the Bhikshu University in Anuradhapura in 2012. And after the conference, it was a wonderful conference, wonderful opportunity. And then after the conference, we got to go to see the ruins in Anuradhapura, where 5,000 monks used to be existing before they were all wiped out. And we went amongst the ruins. It was a beautiful experience. And this was a holiday. It was April. I don't know the holiday. You could probably look it up and figure it out. In 2012, when thousands of people were walking through the ruins. And the monks were coming from all over the Asian area to teach people in spreads of 500 people here, 1,000 people there, that sort of thing, with your blankets on the ground, and they were teaching people. And I was very new, and I was in a bright orange robe for the reason that I was doing the teaching making little TV programs for 30 minutes. And they said the only way I could do that, would be allowed to do it, was if I was orange. And I've always thought that was cute, because that meant that people could only hear me teach them if I was orange. And I went along with it, and I did that. So I had this robe and I was wearing it on this trip. You know, they asked me to wear it for the conference, so I did. And these women ran up to me, and they're very important in my life. And I didn't realize until maybe the last year and a half how important they really were. This woman ran up to me in white, and she was an elderly woman. And she walked right up to me and said, "Will you please teach us the Dhamma?" And I said, "Who?" And she said, "There are 40 of us, and we are all women, and we are widows." And I said, "Widows?" "Yes, because of the war, we lost our sons and our brothers and our fathers and our husbands, and we're all widows. That's a very difficult thing over here for the widows." And they had this organization in Kandy, and she said, "Will you teach us? We'll take care of you. We'll take care of you and support you if you can." It was a very inopportune time for me to do this for them. And I felt in my heart right away, this is very sad, because I'm not ready to do this right now. And in 2 weeks, I have a ticket to go home to the United States and help Bhante there, and I had to go back. But I asked them, I can't do it now, but I need to ask you all a question. Why would you come to me, an American woman who is in robes, and ask me to teach you when you grew up in Sri Lanka, in the heart of Buddhism? Yes. You grew up here, and didn't you learn the Dhamma? And she said, she kind of had tears in her eyes. She said, "You have to understand." And I said, "Well, tell me." She said, "We went, all of us, all 40 of us, every single week to the temple, every single week Panchasila, every single week Dana, every single week merit to those who died. But we have no idea what the Buddha taught and what kind of a gift he gave to humanity. And we want to know what it was before we die." I was struck. I had 2 weeks left and couldn't do anything but go back to the hotel and, "Please forgive me, and hopefully I can find you again," which I couldn't when I went back in 2014. I couldn't. And didn't manage to find them. But then over the years, something's happened in relationship to this story that's very important, that steers me in how I teach the Dhamma and why I give you the lessons I give you. And Bhante has found an answer to a precise thing, a capsule of teaching, very specific with 8 parts, that if it's taught in the correct order, it weaves together in a causal relationship. We're examining it this year to see, is this really causal? And it is a causal relationship, to get the instructions and then the hindrances and then the path, and then to hear the go back in Satipatthana and straighten out some of the angles of understanding slightly, and then come out of Satipatthana and go into dependent origination, and then teach you the anatta teaching. That's a causal relationship. If you have this one, you understand that one. It's a co-arising of information. It was fantastic to see that all of a sudden we have this whole, I have this whole window now to examine many of the groups that you learn about, the pieces of the teaching amongst the 37 requisites of enlightenment. There's 4 of this, 4 of this, 4 of this, 5 of this, 5 of this, 7 of this, and 8 of this. Well, is that series of 37 causal? Is it causal relationship? And inside each piece of 4 or 5 pieces, are they causal? This is fascinating. I thought I was done with this. I thought I understood it. And now this is a whole new window open to see this causal connection that exists inside dependent origination is showing up with successful students that have been charted by me, their progress through retreats for almost 12 years. I've been charting these. How long does it take you to get from the beginning to here? What's happening? How long are you sitting? How long are you with your object of meditation? What exactly are you doing when you are doing the 6 R's? Are you doing it correctly or wrongly? And does that hinder you or help you, or what does it do? I've been doing this for years. And these charts, we pulled them out this year. We actually found something fascinating. I never picked up on it before. We did 8 retreats this year, this tour through Asia before he went back this time. And what I sat down with him in Goa when we were, look at this, I never saw it before. I didn't even see it. And I was looking at the charts, and here it is right in front of me. In order to get into cessation, we're sitting a minimum of 2 hours, and it's 2.5 to 3 hours before they tipped out of neither perception or non-perception into cessation. This is priceless information, because you get a lot of people, they come and they want to do the meditation, but they want me or Bhante or another teacher to get them to enlightenment. Well, I have a whole class on that now that I teach, because I found some priceless information about all we do. All we're supposed to do is listen to you, and then we point. Actually, we're pointing, whether you know it or not, at what you just said to us to give you the next piece of advice. It's fascinating to me. Anyway, what happened was, over the years, I just recently, even in the last, before the lockdown happened, before we went on the retreat circuit, there was a meeting where I gave a talk to about 200, 300 people, and over a third of that crowd were teenagers and college age people going to college, and family people, and then there were professors and doctors and unprofessional people. And the fascinating thing was, after I was finished the talk, and we gave them 15 minutes in the front, I gave them 15 minutes to talk to me just as a private group. What is the one thing, your most biggest concern about Buddhism right now? And actually came about because one boy asked the question, and then I asked the rest of them afterwards, does this also have to do with you? And they all stood there and said, oh yeah, oh yeah, oh yeah. Because the big question as a young person is, how do I explain to anyone what it is to be Buddhist? And why should I be proud of being a Buddhist? They don't know. They don't know what he found. And I didn't know they didn't know. So, and now it's a language thing and getting things translated and setting up small classes and trying to get people to see and watch their faces when they finally figure out, my gosh, he found something. He actually did find a way out of suffering, and it's not only nibbana. You see, that's the thing. The Westerner comes and they want to go in here and they want to meditate and they want to get to nibbana. Okay, fine. You know, we can help you do that and help you understand the mundane nibbanas and the supernandane nibbana and the difference in everything. And we can help you to understand the attainments and the fruitions and why are there 8 times instead of 4 times and all the rest of that. Sure, fine. But that's not it. The Buddha was a humanistic teacher. He was not teaching Buddhists. Let it sink in. There were no Buddhists when Gautama was teaching. He taught anyone that came to him from any group, any discussion, any debate, and he presented the teaching to them so they found their way to the teaching and got involved in what? What did they get involved in? We don't teach you something. We're not really teachers, we're guides, because we don't teach you anything. This is the way it works when you're hooked up with Bhante directly. We do not teach you anything we haven't really completely understood or totally experienced. We don't. And so all we're doing when we look at what we're actually teaching you is we are teaching you what Buddha decided to teach when he became enlightened. Siddhartha decided, okay, I'll teach, but what am I going to teach? And he has to walk all the way to Savatthi and he's going to think while he's walking, what am I going to teach? And what he decides to teach for 45 years is a teacher who chooses to teach the same subject. And what is the subject? I'm going to show them how they can do what I did. Get it? I'm going to teach them how to do it exactly the way I did it. That's why when you go to Sutta number 72 in section 18, the Vajrakati on fire sutta, you cannot mix anything with this recipe at all. If you do from anything else, it won't work. But the irritating thing about this, what we're teaching you, it's irritating. It's not, it's very easy to understand. It's immediately effective. It's inviting deeper inspection, and time doesn't make any difference. It never touched it at all. If you start to practice this exactly the way we're telling you, without trying to add in anything away from a breathing or a body or any other kind of meditation, it will work. And we just did over 300 people this year on those retreats. I just was tallying up some things. And it's amazing what's happened. And if someone actually does take it and do very well, the golden one is they take it home. And that's what the young ones wanted to understand. Why can't we as Buddhists take our teaching home? Why is it the Christian, the Jew, the Muslim, and everybody else can tell us everything about what they do, but we have nothing to say back, except why we go to the temple? To take Srila. Okay, so this sutta I'm showing you used to be a sutta, this lesson, that was given to every monk, and they had to learn this one prose section in here by heart. And they had to go to villages and they gave it to the villagers, and the villagers understood it. Of course they did, because everybody understands past, future, and present. But let's see if you really do, okay? So I'm going to take you into the board and teach it to you like I teach it to a taxi driver who's really upset when I get in the cab. I am famous, you know, in Sri Lanka. I am the one that teaches taxi dhamma. I teach the taxi driver from the back seat to calm down when he's upset, which is another story. Okay, I won't go into that one. But I teach him this lesson, and by the time I get out, sometimes they pay for the cab. And sometimes they're just so happy it's half price, but most of the time they're really happy when I get out of the taxi, because if I got in and they were upset, this lesson changes everything to understand that the Buddha actually did find something, and he found something that was something to use in your life all the time, like TWIM. Like TWIM. That's why the piece I gave you, the written piece I gave you, has TWIM in that document as well. Okay. So let's go to the board and we'll just pretend, okay, and see what happens here. Let's see, we gotta turn the whiteboard on. Okay. Whoops, now I have to go find it, right? Okay, and I have to, what do I do with you guys? I always love this. You know, my kids used to have a program when they were growing up called Zoom. It was, they'd tune in at 5 o'clock, they would tune in and they would take part in a little program that was called Zoom. Oh, here we go. I'm going to zoom now. Okay. Now, the way this starts is you make this over. Oh, I'm going to do that with my finger. Whoops, I usually can do it. Well, I guess I can't. Okay, it's all right. You're on part of the board, but that's okay. Now, let's see what color we are. Okay, we're blue. Now, and I want you to try and draw a line from the left side of the paper over to the right side. And this is what we're going to talk about. On the left side, that's where you're born. And on the right side, this is where you die. Now, depending on how old you are,
I think she got disconnected. She is muted. I think you can unmute her. You're the host. Can unmute her. And I'm unable to get through her on the phone.
there, I'm better? Okay. So this is your life continuum line. Okay, like this. And you're going to be moving in this direction. Naturally, everybody is. And basically, when you're born, it's like the universe gives you a little car. So you just pretend, for right now, I want you to just pretend you're in a little car. Okay, like there's a little car. And your little car, it has a nice trunk. And you're driving along the continuum line. Now, everything to the left of this little bead, this is where the past is. We're going to make the past red. Okay, so this is the past. And so normally I would do it like this, and I'll play both roles to save us time, okay? I would say, oh, Mommy, I have my spelling page, and this is my first spelling page, and I have a word, the word ST. Mommy, what does P-A-S-T mean? What does it mean? What does this word past mean? And this I usually ask my student, and my student will tell me something like this. They'll say to me, well, it's over, and it's fixed in time. And I want to know, can we change this? If it's past, if it's over, can we change it? We cannot change it. We can't change it. Can't we change the color? No, we can't change the color. We can't change the color. We can't change the shape. We can't change the anything that happened. It's already in the past. It's not going to be able to, you're my mom and you can't fix it. No, I can't fix it. I can't fix it. Okay, I have another word. The other word is Future. What does the word future mean? Well, something that's in the future isn't here yet. Well, what's it going to be? I don't know, but you're my mommy. You're supposed to be able to tell me what is supposed to be. What is it going to be? And I don't know what it's going to be, because it could be anything, because today everything isn't like this or this. It's like this. It's kind of like that. It could be anything depending on what you do now. You can affect what it's going to be in the future, but I don't know how to tell you, but you don't know what it is. I can't tell you. Nobody can tell you what it is. So this is, we don't know. We don't know what it is. Well, okay. Then I have to ask you a question about this past. Somebody said this past is history. What does that mean? If the past is history, it means it's all done. So it's all done. You can learn from what happened, but it's actually done. So what we know, and this is something that was cool that came out of Christianity, but it's in a lot of other religions too. You hear the same thing. The past is history, and tomorrow is a mystery. About these words, we all know this. But the thing we forget about is, well, when that happened back there in the past, can you just tell me, was there a lot of energy in that? What happens if my grandma sits in a chair and thinks about the past and she tells me she's reliving the past? What does that mean? Well, it means she's thinking about the past and it's overwhelming her, but her energy is not okay. When you're talking about the past, would you kind of agree, just go like this if you agree? Just go like this. Okay. Would you agree that the energy is used up in the past? It's not there anymore. The event in the past was used up, and it can't, that energy is gone. That's important to understand, that this energy here, the energy is gone from this event. Now, how about the future? What happens if daddy goes and he says he's so tired when he gets home because he's been worrying all day about the future? Okay, but if he's been worrying all day about the future, this energy isn't here yet. This energy isn't here yet. So what does that mean about this right here? And that is the present. Yeah, that one. Right now, forget about present moment. Present moment is a nice cliche, and someday, if you've been meditating for 5 years, you can see the moments. But for the time being, if you look with your watch and look at the seconds going by, it doesn't do you any good to talk about a present moment. But we can talk about a present time. So we'll say the present time is different. That's what you're doing in your present time. That's when you're practicing, you're sending to a loving kindness to a secret friend, a special friend, okay, a spiritual friend. But if you're at work, you're writing a report, or you're going to go to the boardroom, or any other number of things, okay? And so the thing is, if something has already happened and it is in the past, what you want to be very careful of is energy. So this is actually a lesson on energy, personal energy. And where does the energy come from? Well, this is what we forget, because in our day and time, we don't talk about the universe very much, and about vows and about spells and stuff like that. And this is kind of not metaphysical, but it's not really metaphysical at all. The truth is, medically speaking, everybody gets 1 glass of energy every day, and it's right beside you, beside your bed, and it's invisible. And this energy is your daily energy. 1 cup of energy each day, your daily energy. It's designed for all human beings, male or female, young, middle-aged, or old, and it's enough for them to carry through and get everything done for one day. But the question is, when you go to work, what exactly do you do with your energy? This is the problem. If you have a husband, or you have a wife, or a member of the family that comes up and shows at the door when he comes home, and he gets to the door and says, basically, when I come in, please don't talk to me. I don't want to eat. I'm too tired. I'm exhausted. I don't want to play with the dog, play with the kids, go see a friend. Why? Because he used his energy the wrong way that day, is the truth of the matter. So what did he do with his energy? Okay, here's what he did. Watch this. We divide the energy into 3 parts, and the bottom part we'll see is for the present. But this one up here, this is for the future. And this one is for the past. The problem is, if I give 1/3 of my energy away to the past, in sorrow, lamentation, pain, grief, and despair, and lamentation is serious. It falls into depression, causes you to get depressed, and all that depression about something that happened in the past. What did you do with what happened? Let's look in the line up here. Here, let's make it purple. Okay, this happened here, but guess what? You didn't drive by it in your life. Instead, you put it in your trunk. And as you went along, at first, your wonderful little car driving through life was driving very smoothly. But then by the time it gets along further in life, it kind of looks more like a fat sort of thing like this, because in the back side of it, something is wrong, because in the back side, the trunk is looking like that, and there's stuff hanging out of it because you've been putting stuff in there and carrying it with you. And you carry things along with you in your life. This is going to block your meditation. So in the beginning of your meditation, when you're practicing metta and we have you in retreat, if you run into a wall, it means your mind has gotten open up enough to see one of these pieces of rubbish that was blocking the way. Like there's pieces that are on the track. By the time you're coming up, there's pieces sitting on the track. You don't want to collect them in the trunk, but we see everybody else do it, and that's why we do it. So a lot of people will come home, they say, I spent 1/3 of the day thinking about this and thinking about that happened. And what you have is a serious illness. It's called I shoulda, woulda, coulda, itis. Itis in medical terminology means irritation of what you should have done, what you could have done, what you would have done. If only I had story, on. See, that's what you do. We all do it. Everybody does it until we understand how this is working. Okay. The next one is the future. You know, he was also really upset because when he was at work, he may have been constantly worrying about whether he's going to pay the rent, keep the car, what's going to happen next, will I have a job, everybody's going through COVID, what do we do next? And if you let that consume you without any clarity, okay, what's happening is you're using up 1/3 of this energy in what we call projection. And projection is agonizing. And projection, there's 2 kinds of projection. One is this kind of projecting what might happen. And this goes back to the story of Chicken Little in the farmyard, who was the little baby chicken that was born with his mother, and all the other chicks were fine, but there was something wrong with Chicken Little, because when Chicken Little got to the doorway in the barn, he didn't want to go outside because he said, oh, it's dangerous out there. Oh, the sky might fall. And then one day it rained and everybody was fine, except for Chicken Little was running around saying, we're all going to die, we're all going to die, we're all going to die. Because he didn't know what the rain was. He didn't know what anything was. And people are like that. If we project in that way, then we're terrified of the world, and because we don't understand this balance. So that kind of projection is really bad. The other kind is the other kind is basically what I described with COVID and with not knowing what's going to happen next and letting this, the only thing we have to fear, and fear is fear itself. And it doesn't keep our mind clear, and it doesn't help us solve problems or anything like that if we get involved in that. It's really bad. So it's very, very hard for that one to happen. Okay, and then what happens next is you look, and what happened down here? Oh my gosh, there's only 1/3 of your energy left for today. So why should we be upset with people when they come home and they're really down and everything else, if this is what happened to them during the day? So putting it in perspective, once we have this information, what do we do? Okay, I don't know how to take a picture of this, but if you're recording it, you have it that way. But now what we need to do, I don't know if I'll erase it. I think I'll just go out of here and just talk to you about this next part. You see, when we talk about the Buddha and we say he found something and he found a solution to everything, this is a really good example. This is a piece of knowledge I'm giving to you, but you should see what happens to the taxi driver. He doesn't realize what he's doing. You see, the man got in the car before I was in the car. And that man, he got in the car and told the taxi driver how to drive and how fast to go and where to turn and which route to take. And he was angry because that's his taxi and it's his world. And nobody has a right to tell me how to drive my taxi. This was his problem when I got in the taxi and wanted to go for almost an hour to get back to the temple. He was in such a fit. He took me in the cab and then got on the phone, and I knew he was telling his wife everything, you see. And then he had a little Buddha on the front of the car, and I pointed out to him, you're Buddhist. And he said, yeah. And I couldn't work with my phone. I usually work with my emails on that long trip back there. But I said, okay, what do you remember about Sunday school? I said, what do you mean? He said, I said, well, what about anicca and dukkha and anatta? Do you remember anicca, dukkha, anatta? And he said, well, I think so. Dukkha is the suffering. And he said, I don't know really about the anatta, but I think, you know, this anicca is a real problem because that's right. But you don't do, what does it mean? And he said, well, I think it means that things keep changing. I said, things keep changing. So let me ask you a question. Is that man still in the cab? And he said, no, he's not in the cab anymore. But that man, he got in my cab and he told me how to drive and he told me what to do. I said, shh, shh, shh. I said, did it change? I mean, let me ask you a question. He said, okay. When somebody gets in your taxi, when you get in the taxi, when he gets in, does he always get out? He says, of course it does. It's a taxi. It's a cab. They get in, they get out. They always do. So I said, well, then what's your problem? Oh, that man. Don't tell me the story again. I said, don't tell me the story again. You just told me you knew what anicca meant. What does it mean? It means that everything's going to change and nothing's going to stay the same. Well, that man got out. He says, well, yes, he did. And I said, well, then why are you so unhappy? Why would you get on your wife after the man got out of the taxi and tell her everything? So now she's going to be so sad and upset when you go home and you go back to the house. Why'd you do that? Well, because that man, I said, the man is gone. I'm in the taxi. I'm in the back seat. You know, I can't tell you how many times I've done this. with taxi drivers, even in Malaysia with Muslims and all these different people. I don't know who they are. All I know is they're upset. And if they understand Anicca has a secret. It's a secret about Anicca. Anicca is always looked upon as Anicca, dukkha, anatta. And Anicca happens and things change, and so we get to dukkha, and then we're suffering. And by the way, anatta is the way out. I could never figure out why those three pieces were sitting there together, but anatta was the way out. Isn't that funny? I always thought there must be something bad about that word anatta because it's with anicca and dukkha. No, wait a second. Let's sort this out. Let's try and figure this out. Okay, you see, here's the thing. Anicca, turns out, with one of my students this year, has brought me up to date about anicca, and I never suspected this. Anicca is our friend. And this is what the taxi driver figured out. Anicca is the friend because the guy got out of the cab. And when it changed, he's the one that made all the suffering happen to himself, and he didn't have to do it. And then I tried to explain to him, the Buddha actually taught us something really cool. And he said, what? I said, nothing happens to you at all. Well, that happened to me when that guy got in my cab. I said, don't worry about that. He got out of your cab. And that was anicca. Now, what the taxi driver, by the way, by the end of the trip, he ended up paying for the cab. He paid for the cab. I didn't have to pay to go back to the temple. So almost 4 months later, I had done this to a number of other taxi drivers as an experiment. If I got in, I wanted to see if it would keep working. This is simple. This is not Buddhist. This is logic. This is logic. He got out of the cab and everything changed. Oh, this is very, very interesting. Okay, so what happened here that's very, very interesting is about 4 months later, I went to the bookstore down in Colombo, the big Buddhist bookstore in Colombo. And I bought some books, and I called a cab, and there's a big staircase, and I had to walk down the staircase and get into the taxi. The funniest thing happened because I was using taxis to go everywhere. And I went down the stairs, and the man jumped out of the taxi, opened the door, and let me in. I'm thinking, what kind of taxi is this? And he let me in. And then he said, on the front of the car on the dashboard, at the bottom was a square piece, and the Buddha was sitting on top of it. And on the bottom piece on the square was a little sign in orange letters, anicca, anicca, anicca. We need to make a dance, and it's called anicca. Why do we need to make a dance called anicca? Because of COVID. Because of COVID, someday, okay, it's going to be anicca. Everything is going to change. You have to have a sense of humor with this. And he looks at me and he says, and I want you to know that my wife loves you. Oh, that one threw me. Why does your wife love me? Well, and he said, well, because you didn't know, but when I wasn't supposed to marry my wife because her family hated me, and mother didn't want me to marry her at all, but I married her anyway. And then everything was all right until she had children. When she had children, she wanted to go see her mother, and I had to take her to see her mother. And her mother was really mean to me because she didn't like me. Even after she had grandchildren, she didn't like me. Okay, I said, what happened? But that doesn't bother me anymore. I said, why? Why doesn't it bother you anymore? Well, it doesn't bother me anymore because of Anicca. I said, what does that mean? He says, well, I go over there and I don't care now if she stays for 20 minutes or if she stays for 2 hours. I don't care because I get my iced tea and I go out and sit on the porch and I read a paper. I don't care. And if she wants to talk to me, I let her and I just say yes to everything. And why do I say yes to everything when I disagree with everything? Why do you do that? Because of Anicca. Because I know now, I know something. I know everything's going to change. Do you realize how earth-shattering that is? I don't know if you guys realize how earth-shattering this is. People don't know this stuff. It's a simple one. So this is one of the things I was telling the boys about. This is something that's easy to make, you know, flags for everybody, little flags like the team at the university for the football team, little flags like this that say Anicca. And give it to everybody, because we can do that, because they don't know what Anicca is, but everything changes and everybody knows everything changes. So what if you made flags and gave it to everybody, you see? So what exactly did the Buddha think this was very important? Did he think anybody would get it? Well, let's go to the sutta. Let's look at the sutta and just look at this. Just look at the prose that's in the sutta. You don't have to go in the rest of the lesson. And listen carefully to the prose. Let not a person revive the past, or on the future build his hopes. For the past has been left behind, and the future has not been reached. Instead, with insight, let him see each presently arisen state. Let him know that, and be sure of it, invincibly, unshakably. Now, the rest of the suit, this prose is about, you know, you better do this quick because you're living now and you have the opportunity. If you don't do it, death can come knock at the door anytime. So you should do this, because if you do this and you understand the past and the future, your whole life has been like taking a big backpack or a trunk and emptying it and throwing it off, and a big front pack of worrying about the future and just taking it off and putting it down. And now you have a body and it's just you, and it's your light. And if you stay in the present time for the day and you do what? So now here's the kicker on this. If we examine the hindrances and we look at the things you think about in research, we find 85 or 90% of what you're thinking about is from the past. Now, when you're thinking, that's a lot of energy for your brain. So will you sleep better, eat better, have better indigestion? Will you be absolutely, positively will? So this is what I mean by taking home the basic part of Buddha's beginning. Forgiveness is in the very beginning in the forest tradition in Sri Lanka today. Still, if you have one of the older teachers in their 80s, they're going to tell you when you first get there, you have to forgive everybody. I don't care what they did. Bhante talks about the woman who the sharks killed her child and she had to forgive the sharks. He talks about the woman who was raped and have to forgive the rapist. You're not going to bring the rapist to dinner. Let's get that clear. But you're not probably ever going to see him again. But if you carry that rapist in your head, you have ruined your life at the front door. It's a very bad, heavy thing to do. So this is like a joyful thing. It's something simple to forgive other people. Now, the first part of your teaching is what? If I was here in a longer class, I'd take you back to the beginning. Say you have Dana, Sila, Bhavana first. It isn't Sila Samadhi Panya. Let's get that straight. Dana opens the heart and softens the heart. Sila is being taught to you to protect you from your hindrances coming. It's all very organized. All of it is very, very organized. And the bhavana, the first bhavana means development of mind with what you have so far, which is dana and shila. Now, the next part, when you go to shila, samadhi, panya, the shila includes the dana. It should be working now. It should be working, folks. The heart is smiling. Who said the monks didn't smile? Whoever said that wasn't looking in the text anymore. How did the monks get the botanical garden from King Pasenadi so that they could spend close to 17 of their rains retreats in that botanical garden every year, camp there, stay there? And that would be their look at them. You have to listen to what happened in, good, you went to the wrong one. First of all, okay, yeah, we'll go there. First of all, we'll go there. And you, in 89, section 12, the moment that you go there, you find out very clearly what happened and why he got that location. What happened was King Pasenadi took his counselors and they all went to the botanical garden to see who was going through the garden, because there had been a request to give the garden to the Buddha and his monks so they could have rains retreats, hold the rains retreats there. We think that enough of all those people. And he was in charge of locations and logistics and food and water and seats and everything when they had these big gatherings that happened. So they went to the garden, and the king went around and looked at one side of the garden, then he went and looked at the other side of the garden, then he came to the Buddha who was in the garden and had a talk with him. And here's what he said: "Venerable sir, I have walked and wandered from park to park, from garden to garden. And there I have seen recluses and Brahmins who looked lean and wretched and unsightly and jaundiced, with their veins standing out on their limbs, such that people would not want to look at them again. I've thought to myself, surely these venerables are leading the holy life in a discontent, and they have done some evil deeds, and they're concealing it. They're so lean and wretched and disturbed, such that people would not want to look at them or hear them again." So then he says, "I went up to them and asked them, 'Why are you venerables in this condition?' And they said, 'It is our family sickness, great king, we are disturbed.'" So they had a great deal of mental proliferation and difficulty and lack of knowledge of how anything works, and they were just wrapped up in their stories and their problems, and we're not taking care. But he says, "I now see your big, sincerely joyful, plainly delighting, with their faculties fresh and living at ease." How does a human being look when that's the description? "Subsisting on what others give and abiding with their minds as aloof as a wild deer. I have thought, surely these in the Blessed One's dispensation, and since they abide this way, smiling and cheerful, with their minds so open and pure as a wild deer's is. This, venerable sir, is why I infer, according to Dhamma, about the Blessed One. He is fully enlightened in the Dhamma, and is well proclaimed by the Blessed One that the Dhamma of the Blessed One's disciples is practicing in a good way." That's how he got it. That's what he did. They just went over there and they sat and they practiced. And while they were practicing, guess what? They were smiling. Now, when you go back to how important this lesson is that I taught you, go back to 131, and guess what? This blows my mind. No place else in this book of 152 suttas with 6 or 8 sections of different topics and such are you going to find anything like this? But in the division of the expositions, the first 4 suttas are teaching the same exact sutta to 4 separate, very important people with details about what you are supposed to be doing. You do not revive the past. For one, nurtures delight if they do that, or sadness. And I had such material from the past, and they think about that. One nurtures delight there, thinking, I had such feelings. I had such perceptions. I had such thoughts. I had such consciousnesses, then I can't let them go. I can't stand not thinking about the divorce, how much I hated him and he hated me. And this happened and that happened. And she did this and they did that and he did that. And oh my gosh, we're so full of this. It's remarkable. It eats us alive. And so I had such consciousnesses, and that is how one revives the past. But how bhikkhus does one not revive the past? One does not nurture delight with this thinking. I had such material form in the past. So what do you do when you're working with your hindrances when they come up? You do not nurture the delight or the dislike. 2 kinds of clinging, 2 kinds of craving, right? You do not nurture it. So what is nurturing it? This takes you to another lesson, of course, if you're in one of my retreats, because it takes you to your retreat lesson on the hindrances. And the most important part of the hindrance is, how does it work? What is this? We know the 5, but I can show you 16 of them in here in 9 different suttas. And guess what the solution for every single one of them is? I bet you can't guess. Abandonment, relinquishment, letting them go, leaving them alone. And guess what? It's teaching you it'll happen. Anicca will happen. It will change and it will fade away. Why? Because you were giving them nutriment. I was giving them nutriment. What feeds them is your attention. But how serious is this? What do I mean when I say that? If we go back to 22 and we look at a particular statement, that whole sutta is about the problem of a monk who wanted to pay attention to the hindrances when they come up. In number 22, the Alagadupama Sutta. And he was wrong, and he was telling the new monks, and they were getting in trouble, and the other monks were upset, and they called the Buddha came, and he had to settle the dispute between the monks. And when he talked to this man, what did he say to him about paying attention to anything that comes up to bother you when you're meditating? What did he tell him? Misguided man, to whom have you ever known me to teach the Dhamma in that way? Misguided man, have I not stated to you in many ways how obstructive things become obstructions and how they are able to obstruct you if you engage in them? What's it mean to engage in them, says the student? It means move over there and pay attention to it when you're supposed to be with your spiritual friend. If you understand the real truth of the hindrance, how it operates, then what happens is you can make the decision, the affirmation, I'm not going to pay attention to these at all. It doesn't mean you're going to push them or anything, but when you 6R them, if you're slightly moving, how do you move over there? They say to me, why do I keep moving over there? How does it work? Not how, not why, how? How does it work for you to move over to that hindrance? Oh, well, you have aspects to your practice. You have to be persistent, and you have to be curious. That's a problem sometimes with the hindrances when they come up. What we mean when we say curiosity is important, you have to, when your mindfulness is observation, you're watching what's going to happen next in your practice, right? And when you're doing that, okay, if you slip, it slides down. The power of your observation slides down, and your interest is the other one. Your interest slides down. When the interest falls down and the mindfulness falls down, the curiosity slips over to, hey, what just came up? I want to go see that. That's what happens. Doesn't matter what it is, but you want to go over there. Now, if you engage it, You will suffer. But if you do engage it, I want to point out something to you even more drastic. If you were to sit with it, try to identify by engaging, I mean, it doesn't matter who it is at the door that's knocking. Doesn't matter. I'm not going to let them in because we're having a class, okay? I'm not going to open the door. So it doesn't matter who it is, and it doesn't matter why they came or why it came up or anything. Leave it alone because you said you were going to sit for an hour, didn't you? If you go over with that hindrance, you have now started another meditation. How about that? You're not doing loving kindness anymore. And by the way, where is your friend? Well, I really didn't like that person anyway, you know. Don't tell me that. You have to stay with your friend till she smiles or till he smiles. Don't tell me that. You see, that's the game. You're trying to learn to communicate with your mind and tell them an intention. The intention is for you to be happy as I'm happy. That's what you're supposed to be doing. So don't kid yourself about this. These hindrances are not happening in the process of you doing your wonderful metta meditation, okay? What's actually happening is you're starting another analytical examination of hindrances, and that's a different type of meditation. And we're not doing that. So don't, you know, that's what we sort of talk about when we're interviewing you and we say, should we tell them? Should we tell them that part? I said, go on, tell them. It's kind of funny. When I realized one day, that's actually, if I stay over there, I'm stuck. And I'm probably stuck because I'm almost over. Okay, so we've had a lot. We've had Wove's been doing weaving, and you can't help but do a weaving when you start talking about this topic in the past and the future and the present. So what I want you to remember is the past is history, and tomorrow is a mystery. And this part here is called the present, usually has a big bow on it if it's any of my stuff, you know, a big bow on it, because why? It's a present. And the Buddha's bringing it back to saying, Jody, I'm giving you a present, the present time. And there's a big bow on it, and you can change it tomorrow to a blue bow or a purple bow, no matter what you're doing, whatever you're doing. Yeah, that's it. So it's up to you. This is the kind of thing that the kids get really excited about. And the women would too, if we had a chance to connect with them and tell them the sort of thing we're telling them. Because this is the one where you're smoking out the sheds. You're examining it means cleaning out the mixed up information and trying to get connected and working for you all the time. The one who changes their life the most is the one that goes home and keeps 6Ring all the time. All the time. That's the one. Because this wasn't something, that's the other thing that's ridiculously different about TWIM. The Tranquil Wisdom Insight Meditation is not like other meditations. We're not teaching it to you for a retreat or just to meet once a week. I want to hear from my students. If you come to my classes, I want to hear what you did with it last week. And how did you solve a problem with it? And when I have a student that gets me very excited, who changes the relationship with their mother and their father, and who changes the relationship with the people in the office, and changes the way they present things for their business, and is more productive and happier and having more fun. And by the way, another thing Bhante will tell you sometimes if you're around him a lot is you know that things are getting better and you're making progress with this when you have a sense of humor. You have to have a sense of humor. Why? I'm stuck. Yes, but you remember your flag upstairs on the wall. Anicca. Okay.
Yes. Shall we share the merit?
Mm-hmm. Yes. May suffering ones be suffering free and fear-struck fearless be. May the grieving shed all grief and may all beings find relief. May all beings share this merit that we might thus acquire to the acquisition of all kinds of happiness. May beings inhabiting space and earth, devas and nagas of mighty power, share this merit of ours. Sadhu, sadhu, sadhu.
Thank you
All
so
right.
much, Mr. Khema. I'll contact you.
Thank
You have a happy
for
week.
having us.
Thank you, Dante.
And
Thank
always
you.
remember, anicca, nicca, 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 nicca.